Yo, blessed love. This is Mark Breeze. It's time for the lions to tell them own story. See? God bless.
Blessed love. Yes, Lion Voice Network.
What are you waiting for? Come together, calling from near and far. Know who you are. What are you waiting for? Rally up, it takes the dust. What are you waiting for? Ancestors paved the way for us. Yes, I am Ketis Oyonde, asking, what are you waiting for to come together? The time has come for the lions to tell our own story. This is the Lion's Voice.
African pride, root of all nations, boy. I tried with the lion, the Rastafari. Lion of it tried with lioness like I too. Empress on the front line, we need you. Well, this is Medicine, the steady one, and you are now tuned into the Lion's Voice Network. What the lion fought for do? Scorch them. Roast and parch them.
I will never stop, hail the Most High, and I will never stop, call Rastafari. Blessed love, this is Kushite representing for the Lion's Voice. We are here to tell our own story, Rastafari.
The time has come for lions to tell our own story. Yes, you're listening to Lion's Voice. I is Rastabat hailing from the island of St. Croix. Yeah, man, bring it your Rastafari vibes. Can you feel it? Rastafari. Babylon born when Rasta come together. Can you feel it? Rastafari. Because Babylon done when I and I come together. Look how we live together, look how we work together, Whoa, Babylon done when Rasta come together. Hail I, Rastafari, His Majesty and Empress men and bless. Yeah man, hail him from St. Croix, Rastabat, I hear you.
Aye.
Empress Manel, Alliance, Alliance, your role, universally unfold, be told, Blessed love, this is Itege Idama, and it's time for the lioness and the lion's voices to be heard. This is the Lion's Voice, Rastafari.
Greetings, this is Warrior King, and the time has come for the lions and the lioness to tell their own story. This is the Lion's Voice. Give thanks and praise for the wonderful blessing that's been poured on me. Give thanks and praise. Jah use I as an instrument to set the people free. Jah give her the powers to chant. Jah give her the powers to chant. Rastafari, the Lion's Voice.
The fittest of the fittest shall survive. My people, open your eyes. Wake up. Blessed love, this is Queen Omega representing for all lions and lionesses. With the Lion's Voice, we come to tell our story. Rastafari, live it. Hey, the Lion's Voice, Rastafari.
Yeah, David Trent of Steel Pulse, and I'm saying hail to the Lion Voice because it's time that the lion have its voice, have its own story. Says I'm stepping out here. Hear me now. Oh, yeah, the lion's voice. Raw.
I'm Nana Farika. The time has come for the lioness to tell her story from her viewpoint and tell the world who Queen Omega is. This is the Lion's Voice.
Well, Lion Voice, tell them that's the people. Precise lions, make the lioness them feel nice. Lion vice, with the lion cubs we sacrifice. Lion vice, got to show the people them the life. Lion vice.
Well, great is the Almighty, and greatly to be praised in the city of Haile Selassie I, the mountain of His holiness.
Yeah, from Cape to Cairo, from Timbuktu to the Nile, you know, the whole entire continent.
Beautiful for situation, the joy of the whole earth is Mount Zion, from Accra to Addis Ababa.
Yes, it's beautiful continent, better control, mama.
Very beautiful.
From Cape to Cairo, from Timbuktu to the Nile, I smile for Mama.
I hear you call Mama Africa. Been so long since I see Mama. Father of Africa set the law. The lion come and dismantle Babylon flaw. We gonna use solar energy, use sanitation to build the ecology. We utilizing green technology. We hailing Haile Selassie first without apology. And then we build the youth them economy. We dismantle Babylon monopoly. We teach the youth them how to live properly. Tell them make sure them got the title for them property.
Yes, this beautiful continent, better control.
iRoots Records, an online shop for reggae and dub vinyl, CDs and Rastafari books. Rastafari owned and operated for over 15 years. We ship worldwide. We have many titles from Frontline Publications in stock. We have 50 plus Akabeka Midnight titles, which we believe is the most of any shop in the world. Special invite for the Lion Pride. Use code Lion's Voice and save 10% store-wide. If you spend $125 or more, the discount goes up to 15%. Visit us online at www.irootsrecords.com. The time has come.
321 Productions and RBG Alliance presents the 3rd annual Conscious Reggae Concert Family Unity Fest, featuring the Abyssinians, Aisha Bell, Mary Isaac, Ragalux, I Brave, and many more at the Jammings in New Kingston. 2,500 pre-sold, 3,000 at the door. Children under 12 for free. Don't miss the Abyssinians live in Kingston, Jamaica. Can't be missed. History. Greetings in that divine name of His Imperial Majesty, Emperor Haile Selassie I. Glory and honor in the name of His chosen Queen, Empress Waziri Menen. My name is Kwasi Bansu, aka the Chasmach Kwasi, aka Ras Kwasi, aka the Reading Ras, aka the Pan-African Happy Man. I'm a creative industry attorney, I'm an author, I'm an artist, I'm an actionist, and right now I am the host of Lion Talk Live. Welcome to Lion Talk Live and welcome to the Lion Voice Network, where the Lions are telling our own story. Tonight, we have a very special episode, a special guest, good brethren of mine, Pan-African to the bone, straight out of Nigeria. We're going to get into some deep, deep history tonight, family. Get your ital snacks, get your meditation right, because tonight we are going on a journey into the African giant, and people will know what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about Burna Boy. I'm talking about the country of Nigeria. My guest is born in Nigeria, and we're going to hear, we're going to go into some of the history, but he's also a leader. here in the, or one of many leaders, let me say that, here in the DMV, Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia area, doing some powerful work with our Pan-African umbrella group, LC Pan, and also Appeal, which is making an economic push for cooperative economics. We're going to find out about all of that today on this episode. He is a chemical engineer by training, a doctor in chemical engineering from my alma mater. So this is a heavy episode. I'm really looking forward to this one. As usual, as you come into the space, make sure you click the like button. Let us know where you're watching from in the comments. Before I bring in my guests, I always have to clarify that we have the greatest comment section on the internet. Big up all of the people who make the effort to watch it live. I know that most of the people watch these on the replay, but I always have to big up our live audience and the comment section, the insightful comments, the decorum, you know what I mean? The diplomacy that takes place in the comments, where we can reason, we can agree, we can disagree respectfully. You don't always see that on the internet. And this comment section, I can tell the item, exemplifies that great decorum and that good manners. And if anybody come in with any loosey-goosey, we just ban them, we kick them out quick. We don't even take no time if what you're saying don't make sense. It's not a yes man factory. So we love when people view their opinions respectfully. But we hold it to that high degree of excellence, and we want to maintain that tradition of having one of the greatest spaces on the internet. Also, let me just take time to big up our growing community. Big up to all of the Lion Pride. You know what I mean? Big up all of the Lion Pride. If you subscribe, you're part of the Lion Pride. I want to just big up the latest edition. We are now at 48 members of our Lion Pride on Patreon. And I want to just take time to big up all of our Patreon monthly subscribers, because without them, this wouldn't be possible. We're almost at that magic number of 50 that we want before we start our grant program. So definitely you can join our Patreon and invest in Rastafari, independent, non-aligned media. Big up yourself, Tiger Lily, our latest edition. Ja Revlo, one of our latest edition, a Rastafari trucker. We are having a town hall, our May town hall meeting on Sunday. We'll be having our May town hall meeting. We are going to be welcoming one of our very own Lion Pride on Patreon members, Empress Danielle. She is going to be sharing some information with us. And if you saw her episode, you will know that she left a 6-figure job in corporate America, working as an entrepreneur. She's dealing with accounting, building up with her Kingman in Ghana. So she's going to be sharing with us some things that we need to be doing to prepare for what's coming. Because of the sensitivity of some of the information, we're not going to record this one. So if you're not there live, unfortunately, we usually share the town hall meetings on the Patreon. And you can join our Patreon for free. Remember that. And we share the town hall meetings. You can't participate in them, but you can always watch the replays for free on our Patreon. So join the Patreon community. It's very important, because what happens is that YouTube, we don't control YouTube. And when you're on YouTube, I don't know your email. I don't know nothing. YouTube can kick me off tomorrow because I say something controversial. But we always will have that information from the Patreon. We got the newsletter. We have a whole ecosystem outside of YouTube. So if you love what we're doing and you want to be a part of the family, like-minded individuals, then go over to the Patreon, subscribe. When we hit 50 in the Patreon, we're going to start a grant program. We're going to be giving micro grants to people doing positive work in the community, and we're going to interview them and highlight their work. And we're going to vote on who those people are in the Patreon at our town hall meetings. So if you want to be a part of our little small uprising, it's small now, but it's going to grow. You can join the Patreon and be a part of our town hall meeting this Sunday. We are growing. So now is the time for you to get on board the ship. This month, I think we've had the most views since we started the channel. We're nearing, I think, 75,000 views for the month. So something is working. You know, I really give thanks for the brethren and sistren who have been consistently watching, supporting. Tomorrow night, we are welcoming the UNIA ACL local chapter, DMV chapter, Baba Singor. He's been on the platform, but we're also going to have Baba Mosi, Rassam Collins. They're talking about African Liberation Day event taking place this May 30th. And I will be there, yours truly. I'll be speaking and performing. The artists, they said they want the artists. They don't just want to book the panelists. They want the artists. So I'll be there speaking and performing at the UNIA meeting. And we're going to have them tomorrow talking about the UNIA, some of the powerful works that is happening. I think it's a nice way to seal up our African liberation. And then on Saturday, we'll be talking to the Rastafari community of Sierra Leone. So make sure you keep it locked. Stay tuned. Big up all of the ones coming into the chat. Let us know where you're watching from. We have a lot going on. And we are, again, we're growing steadily, but we need your support. The vision that we have, let me just share the vision before I bring on the guests. The vision that we have is that we can use the numbers that we have here to cause change, meaning we just hit, I think we're at 71,000 subscribers. If we had 50,000 people spend $10 with one of our guests, take me out of the picture. I would love you to spend $10 with the platform, but it's okay. If we had 50,000 people spending $10 with one of our guests, that would be 500,000 US that we could aggregate right there in a moment, changing lives. We can do that every Wednesday and every Saturday. Every time we go live, we have the power to do that. So, and remember that we put the guest contact information in the description. So after the episode, you can go into the description and support the guests. Every guest that I bring up here is working. They're doing liberation work. So I'm really appealing to our audience, to our global Lion Pride. Don't just be a passive watcher. Be part of the revolution. And we have what we call the 1-1 cocoa full basket philosophy, or the every mickle make a muckle strategy, meaning that we may never see big money as individuals, but the $10, the $5 that you would spend buying coffee, you can put that toward a greater good. And when enough of us, like-minded people, direct capital to the workers, now we change the paradigm. I was watching an analyst today say that what is coming, the economic disaster, taking 20% of the global oil off the market. They're saying the economic disaster that's coming is projected to cause anywhere from 20 to 30% contraction of the global economy. And to give some perspective, the Great Depression was a 20% contraction of the global economy. So they're saying it's going to go upwards of 30%, maybe 35% contraction of the global economy. So that means that it's going to be something that we have not seen in our lifetimes. So I just want everyone to know that we have to prepare, and we're not prepared. There's no shame in saying that, but collectively we can prepare. And the way that we do that is not by reinventing the wheel. The way that we do that is we identify the people in our communities that are doing the work, and we help them to scale, because they're going to continue to do what they've been doing. We don't need to test out anybody right now. We just need to support the people who are doing the work. And there are people in our community who have been doing the work, who have track records of doing the work, and I'm bringing them all to the item. So when you see the guests come, and this brethren here is doing mighty work, so don't embarrass me, please, Lion Pride. Let's put some money in this guest's pocket or for his cause, whatever it is, whether it's a book, whether it's an organization. We let the guests determine how they want that support, but we just ask the Lion Pride to go ahead and to support. And again, if you're watching on the replay, the information will be down in the description of this video. We are gonna build brick by brick, step by step. So again, big up everyone who has been supporting this movement, this uprising. We are on track to hit 100,000 subscribers this year, but it means nothing if it's just 100,000 people watching. We want an active audience. We want an active Pan-African vibration, meaning that we are using media in this time, in this modern era, for its true power, which is to mobilize the people toward one cause. So that being said, let me just big up my sponsors. I know you saw we had a new commercial, the Conscious Reggae Concert, the Abyssinians. If you know the Abyssinians, they have one of my favorite songs in life. They sing the song Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and also Sata Masagana. I mean, legendary. They're going to be performing in Kingston, Jamaica at the Conscious Reggae Concert. Conscious Reggae Concert has come on board as one of our advertisers. So if you're in Jamaica, I know we have a big following in Jamaica. Make sure you are there in New Kingston. Put that on your calendar. We'll be running the commercial. Make sure that you're there in Kingston, Jamaica, supporting these legendary reggae music artists, you know what I mean? And also big up iRoots Records. We need some of you to buy the vinyl, buy the books. Frontline Books is also one of our sponsors. All of our sponsors. Remember, we're creating that African marketplace here. So we want you all, again, enjoy the guests, enjoy the vibration, but let us spend some money. Put it in your budget, you know, $10 a week. I'm going to spend it on the Lion Pride. We got to feed the ecosystem so that we can all be strong. We're separating ourselves from Babylon, meaning that we got to spend with each other. We got to support each other. We got to invest in each other. I spoke with two sisters in this strong who said they're coming on board the Patreon. So hopefully we'll hit that 50 mark before our town hall meeting, and I'll have a beautiful announcement to give to all of the item next time that we meet next Wednesday about hitting that goal. And long time Lion Pride, no, we've been trying to hit 50 people in the Patreon for over a year, probably 2 years now. We've been trying to hit that goal. We haven't done it yet, but we're very close. 48, 2 more, and we're there. We can do it tonight. If you want to do it tonight, you see the Patreon down there. Let's get it done tonight. We can do it. All right. Housekeeping out of the way. Let me just big up Ras Lidge. When you see me sipping my water, I'm supporting a Rastafari business. Big up Ras Lidge and the Rego movement. All of our sponsors, advertisers, the people who are building out this ecosystem, big up yourself. You know what I mean? You're putting your money where your mouth is, and we love it. Big up the greatest online community on the planet Earth. If you're new here, just read the comment section. Knowledge, jokes, family, love, just good vibration. You know what I mean? It's all in the comment section. Big up to all of my Lion Pride who support. All right. Now, this guest is this is gonna be a classic episode. I already know because this brother, his knowledge is heavy. He is one of our community leaders. He's well respected in the communities about his business. He's a family man. He is an example of, you know what I mean, putting your money where your mouth is and really standing up and showing up for the community. And I'm honored to have him here. And I'm asking us to just give a warm Lion Pride welcome for our guest for the evening, Dr. Kelechi Egwim. You have to let me know if I'm mispronouncing that,
You
my
good?
brother.
You good? You good?
Okay.
Greetings, brother. Greetings. Thank you for
Greetings,
having us.
greetings. Yes, yes. First of all, let me just say it's an honor to have you here on the Lion Talk live show. And we have a tradition here. We're going to ask you to step into our Lion Talk time machine
Okay.
and give us your origin story, because, you know, a lot of the young people, they go to the movies and watching Marvel and DC and the comics of these fake superheroes. And we say we have great people in our community that have their own origin stories that we need to know about. So we're asking, just paint the picture of the rising of the High Chief, Dr. Kelechi Egwim.
Yes. Well, I mean, so starting from the beginning, from my person, I was born in Nigeria. I was actually born after the Biafran War, a couple of years after the Biafran War. I'm from the southeastern part of Nigeria, which is Igbo land, also known as Biafra, specifically from the area that is now Imo State. But you know, I grew up in Ibadan, which is Oyo State, which is in the southwestern region. If you know the geography of Nigeria,
Yes.
Came here when I was young, and you know, to the DC area. Been in the DC area pretty much the whole time I've lived in the U.S. Um, and went to local schools.
Yeah. Stick a pin. Do you have memories of growing up as a child in Nigeria before you came to America?
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
What was that like? Paint that picture. What was it like? Were you in rural Nigeria, in the big city? Where were you in Nigeria?
Right. So I grew up primarily in Ibadan on University of Ibadan campus. My
Okay.
father worked for university, so my formative years was really around that campus, which is Oyo is a big state, and in Ibadan is the biggest city. So I grew up in the city, specifically on a university campus, which was
Yes.
interesting because you see a lot of folks from all over the world coming. Ibadan University is, depending on how you measure it, the oldest, definitely one of the largest universities in Nigeria. Nigeria being a huge country, so you have folks from all over. But we also would go back to the village where we're from. Usually almost like people do here, summertime, they send their children down south to see grandma and grandpa. We did
Yes.
that. So, we would go to the village on a regular basis and whenever we had occasions, but we lived primarily in the Ibadan area, which again, that's Yoruba land. And the village was in Igbo land. So definitely
Okay.
got a little bit of both, but primarily, in what would be considered, the city area.
Did you feel any tension between the Yoruba and Igbo as a youth?
No, I didn't. I mean, Yoruba is actually my first language.
Okay.
So even though my father didn't like us speaking Yoruba in the house because he really wanted his children to speak Igbo.
Yes.
But much like what happens when you bring human beings together,
Yes.
people tend to congregate with like people or
Yes.
people who have that shared kindred. So, you had the same thing happening there in Oyo. You had the Igbo community, and they would socialize together. Everybody worked together, went to school together. When it came to socialization, generally you have that, gravitating towards, your people and so on and so forth. But in terms of tension, I mean, I didn't experience any of that growing up. Um, of course, I was on the university campus, very, very multicultural. I mean, I use that term
Yes.
multicultural in the sense that I understand the term to mean. Oftentimes, multicultural just means there's a black person there, in the way it's used in the U.S. But black
Yeah,
people are the most diverse people on earth. I
of
mean,
course.
there's nobody more diverse than us, culturally speaking. So
Truly.
any of us being together um, in one room is multicultural, because there's a lot of cultures going on there. But it was a beautiful, beautiful upbringing. Wonderful campus.
Yes,
Um,
I
you
can
know, I, I
imagine.
I remember, as a child being able to. I mean, that's talking about like 5, 6, 7 years old, being able to walk around for miles and nobody ever asked where you were going or where you were. There was no fear of being kidnapped or whatever. It
Yes.
was just like whatever you want. I walked to the zoo, go to the park, and go to the playground. We built little forts. It was like a really a wonderful, peaceful, childhood. So yeah, no, I didn't notice any tensions. My best friend, my next door neighbor, was Yoruba.
Okay.
So
Makes
yeah, it
sense
was it
now.
was like that.
And the reason that I ask you that question is because before we started, you said that the Biafran War was part of your origin story,
Mm.
potentially. So maybe you can just let me know how did the Biafran War, and I see in the comment section already people talking about the Biafran War, but how did that factor into your origin story?
Right. So my father was in charge of the nursing part of the hospital in Ibadan, and he had been there way before the Biafran War. Actually, he was there before Nigeria became Nigeria.
Mhm.
So because Nigeria, what I mean by became Nigeria,
Yes,
became declared independence. I mean to say.
yes, yes, yes.
Um, so Nigeria declared independence in 1960, um, and prior to 1960, right? Of course,
Hmm.
we had colonial rule, but
Yes,
prior
yes.
to colonial rule, which started, in early 1900s, we had obviously history prior to Europeans even coming to the
Of
area.
course.
Obviously, the slave trade had a devastating effect on Nigeria, and there's a whole long history of that. If you look at the population of Africans in diaspora, particularly in the United States, and whenever they do DNA tests, almost without fail, a majority of the DNA is Nigerian. Almost
Yes,
without fail, a majority, and there's a reason for that. So many people were taken from that region that
yes.
it's amazing there's anybody even still left there. But that being said,
What wasn't it called? The Slave Coast?
right, it was,
Yes,
especially
yes.
Igbos and Yorubas.
Okay.
So but prior to the Berlin Conference, um, you know, we of course operated independently. We were independent countries. Yorubas were a nation in several nations. Igbos were a federation of nations. So um, we were forced into this creation called Nigeria, by colonial powers when Britain was given that area and they carved it up and governed it and did what they did. So when Nigeria declared independence in 1960, the Igbos were like, all right, well, now the Europeans are gone, we're out. We're going back to
Yes,
existing the way we existed. We whatever agreements, contracts you set up with them, that's not our problem.
yes,
We are not going to continue to live under the paradigm that they created for us. We're going to go back to functioning the way we functioned. So it started in 1966, officially 1967. you know Nigeria was functioning as it was, but the Igbos, who were in the southeastern region, around 1965 was really when Biafra as a nation uh, began to happen, form shape. All the the governors of the Igbo states decided that they were going to secede from Nigeria and go back to being, a nation as it were, outside of Nigeria. That nation being Biafra. So the Igbo states seceded, and initially, it wasn't really taken seriously until we started. We formed our own army, printed our own
Yes.
money, formed our own
Yes.
government. We
Yes.
even had our own stamps. So all the Igbos that were in the Nigerian army left the Nigerian army and formed the army. And so it became very real. And initially, we weren't sure what was going to happen, but in 1967, Nigeria declared war on the new nation of Biafra. So that's
Okay.
how the Biafran War happened. The Biafran War wasn't started by the Biafrans. It was a war declared on the Biafrans by Nigeria because they weren't Biafrans to come back, because a lot of the mineral oil wealth was in Biafra. The Delta
Okay.
region, Port Harcourt, all around there. So
Yes.
and more importantly, the British, who had negotiated negotiated independence. We didn't fight for independence, right? In that sense, they negotiated independence and left with all these, 100-year contracts, given them, which would guarantee their access to the resources. They were
Yes.
going to lose all that because they don't have any agreement with Biafra. They have agreement with
Yes.
Nigeria.
Okay.
So they along with the U.S. and the West, obviously most of the West, all of the West actually, except for Haiti, Cuba, and most countries in the world, unfortunately, either were quiet, sort of, didn't take a side, or they took a side of the Nigerians. So, they declared war. They carpet bombed any farm, any industry they could find. They were given, weapons and planes from Western powers. The idea was to subdue Biafra so that we would, give up, surrender, and return back to Nigeria. If you were an Igbo person in the rest of Nigeria outside of Biafra, you were attacked. And of course, my family was living, as I mentioned earlier, in the south western region, which was
Yes.
Igbo, which is Yoruba land, which is outside of Igbo land, outside of
Yes.
Biafra.
Yes.
Initially, my father, thought that it would be sort of he didn't necessarily see this thing coming out as being a real thing. He was sort of thinking, a little agitation. He wasn't really seeing the movement as being what it was going to end up being. But at some point, he was forced to come to a realization that his family was no longer safe in Nigeria, or in that part of Nigeria. So he sent the family, to the east, and it was, during that period, he actually stayed in Oyo State, which is so that southwestern
Yes.
part. He stayed there for a while, but at some point, his life and everything was in danger. Basically, Yorubas, whoever they were, if they weren't Igbos, the propaganda was so that they were, we saw what happened in Rwanda. The same thing
Yes.
happened in Nigeria.
Okay.
If they saw an Igbo person, they were liable to kill them, attack them, cut their heads off, burn their furniture, destroy their
Wow.
property, what have you. So here he was, a civil servant of the Nigerian government, thinking that we were Nigerian, but then his family was gone. Now he was physically, in danger. So my father had to pack up, and as a matter of fact, by the time my father left to go back to Biafra, left the rest of Nigeria to join his family, the family hadn't heard from him for like 6 months, because
Wow.
because at that point, there was so much. There was an embargo. There was carpet bombing. There was no way of even transmitting information. But he managed to escape with all the property he could carry and showed up in the village where the family was. And a year or so later, I was conceived and I was born. So if it wasn't for that war, I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't
Yeah.
even be here, as it were.
Yes. 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 So, in Nigeria, can people tell who is Yoruba and who is Igbo just from sight?
Most of the time. I mean, I'm very Igbo.
Yes.
So when somebody looks at me, if I'm in Nigeria, sometimes when I'm outside Nigeria. If I'm in Nigeria, if somebody sees me, they'll definitely be able to tell I'm Igbos. There are some, it's not a hard fast thing.
Yes, yes, yes,
Igbos tend to be lighter skin.
yes,
And this is just, this is not from any racial mixing. There's this misnomer that light skin comes from, racial mixing, and that can result from that, but that's not the source of it. We are
yes,
the mothers and fathers of every single race, ethnicity group on the planet. If you saw
yes,
my father was about 5'3", and his eyes were as like this. So you saw my
hmm
father, you think it's a little Chinaman, you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
But
And
that, but
and we see the Khoisan people
exactly, that's how my
in
father looked. That's how my
yeah,
father looked. And that's that's the genetics and diversity of our of African people. So, but Igbos do tend to be a little lighter. Tend to be sometimes there's the gap in the teeth. There's little features here and there, certain
yes,
type of
yes,
jawline. So you can there's a term that's common in the U.S. The term is red bone, which
yes,
some folks may have heard of. Now that term actually is a adulteration of the earlier term, which was a red Igbo.
yes,
During the slave trade, they would identify these Igbos because they tend to, not only be lighter skin, but sometimes they would have red hair. It was a very common thing among Igbos. So there was this sort of like, stigma associated with it. Eventually, that red Igbo evolved to red bone and what have you. But
yes,
you can definitely tell. You can, your houses do tend to be taller.
yes,
So there are different characteristics here and there that you can tell. Obviously, there's also uh, different alterations, markings
yes.
and carvings and whatnot that can sort of, be a giveaway, if you will. But
Identifier,
yeah,
yeah.
most of the time, I would say most of the time people can look at you, obviously your clothes and your mannerism also affects all that. They can look at you and say, you're this, you're that, whatever, without you even saying anything.
Yes. You know that a large percentage of Jamaicans were Igbo.
Yes. I'm
Yes.
absolutely aware of that, and
Yes.
there are a lot of places in Jamaica with Igbo names.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Trinidad is Yoruba land and South Brazil, but Jamaica, we didn't get that many Yoruba. We had mostly Igbo, and they came toward the later part of the trade after the Akan people in the earlier parts of the trade, along with some Congolese. But the two most predominant kingdoms that were in Jamaica were the Akan and the Igbo. So that's just a little history there for those who
absolutely.
didn't know. So talk about the culture shock, moving from, as a young child in Nigeria, moving to the United States of America, into the nation capital. And when you move to America, this is when it's in the height of being the murder capital of the world.
Yes,
So you moved in, after the aftermath of Biafra, which I'm not sure how Nigeria was when you were a child. You said you didn't feel any tension, which is amazing. But you
yeah.
you kind of moved into a pressure cooker area. What was that culture shock like?
Yes, definitely. I was, an alien in a sense. I mean, DC. They didn't. Of course, there were a lot of, well, there were a few Africans, a few Nigerians, but it was very much still a culture, population in low number, low key. Most Nigerians at that time were really just coming as students. So they would basically be at the universities and they would go back. You weren't really seeing a lot of, at that time, you weren't
Yes,
seeing a lot of Nigerians come in to settle. A few of them were
yes,
starting to, but from the early 1960s, to that time, most would just come, go to school, and go back. Even 1940s and 50s, that was the case. So it wasn't a huge population, but there was a few, and I had, my accent was very, very thick. I mean, you can't hear my accent right now,
yeah,
but
yeah,
you know how
yeah,
it is. If you're around, your own people, who speak your language, the accent just pops up. So my accent was very thick. My mannerism was very much Nigerian. I was literally fresh off the boat, if you will. In this case,
Yeah.
fresh off the plane. Yeah, so it was definitely a major culture shock for me. Just sort of seeing the culture in DC and the children trying to relate to them. So it took me a few years to really sort of adapt, because I mean I didn't there was a whole people were very materialistic. That
Yes.
was my
Yes.
first thing I sort of noticed. It was like, the shoes you wore, what brand you wore, whether they were real, whether you had like
New Balance. You had to
the
get your
New
New
Balance,
Balance.
right? The sweatshirt had to be real, Georgetown Hoyas logo. They had all these crazy, like, it was a lot of materialism, and and that was sort of a status symbol. I mean, usually, when you have poverty, right?
Mhm.
The trinkets of wealth,
Yes.
are so elevated. There was so much poverty. These children were just grasping for anything that would say that they were not less than. So that was really elevated. And that was the biggest shock for me, was seeing that degree of materialism. But you find your group, you find your crew, and
Yes.
you
Yes.
adapt. Yeah. By the time I got to high school, people really couldn't tell that I was Nigerian. I mean, I'd sort of
So you were talking about the area. You were talking about the
yes,
area and Gurry and Lurry and Surrey
yeah,
and you had the DC slang.
yes, absolutely, absolutely, and this may be an Igbo thing.
Yeah.
Igbos, I think, because of our experience in the Biafran War, we tend to assimilate uh,
Okay.
very easily. And I
Yeah.
and I use that word deliberately.
Yes.
We tend to disappear, but so you oftentimes can't tell an Igbo person except when you read their name. There's so
Yes.
many Igbo people in prominent, American culture, but they don't necessarily, wear that flag until you see their name.
Yes.
I was watching a video the other day about a sister, Ego Woden. She's on the SNL, Igbo sister. But again, it's like
Yeah.
it's a thing to assimilate. So I mean, I just naturally did that. So by the time I got to high school, you really couldn't tell that I was Igbo, and I wasn't necessarily putting it out there. I mean,
Yes.
I was.
It wasn't cool to be African
It
back
was
then.
not cool. It was not cool. My goal was to really, not remind people. I mean, at some point, everybody knew me, so on and so forth, but I wasn't necessarily putting my Igbo-ness or my Nigerianness out there as a thing. As a matter of fact, I didn't. I even would use my initials as opposed to using my first name, just
Yes.
because I didn't want to. I didn't want that smoke, so as it were.
Yes.
But yeah, eventually, you sort of adapt, you adjust, to the environment, and
Did you play sports in high school or anything?
um, I did. I played soccer and I was on a swimming team.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So was there any other Nigerians at your school?
Yeah, there not that many. There were a few. Most of the Nigerians, at least at Roosevelt, were they had come more recently. I mean, which is relative, of course, but they had
Yes.
just come.
Yes.
So, I mean, I probably wasn't, I already had my group of friends that were primarily from DC. So I probably, still stayed within my circle of friends. But I definitely knew a few of them, and, probably wasn't trying to, again, connect, because the stigma was real. You heard the, African booty slash
Yes.
whatever,
Yes. Yes.
it was a stigma. So I wasn't necessarily trying to get that stigma. I mean, it wasn't until, I got older that I really came to appreciate
Yes.
African culture. Obviously, as a more mature person, to embrace it. I think in high school, I was trying to not be too associated with it, until because I didn't know what I was leaving
Yeah,
behind.
yeah,
I
and I
didn't know what I was
appreciate the
losing.
honesty. As an ardent Pan African, I appreciate that honesty
Absolutely,
because
that
we have a
definitely wasn't
lot
the
of
flag I
young.
was raising.
Yeah, we have a lot of young viewers, and it may be different now because of Afro beats, and I
Yes,
think it's a little bit cooler now to be
very
African.
different.
You
Very
know what I
different.
mean? I didn't meet my first Nigerian until I went to Howard. I grew up
Mm,
in Toronto, and we were all Caribbean. or Caribbean descendant, first or second generation Caribbean. But now when you go to Toronto, there's a lot of Nigerians. I think they all
Yes.
came after I left. But growing up, we didn't really see any, Nigerians, Ethiopians, like Africans were not there, part of my growing up experience. I was the kid with the African name, because I
Right.
have a very Ghanaian name.
Right.
So I was
Crazy.
like
Yeah.
by myself in that sense. But talk to us about your university experience now. You went
Yes.
to school in the why did you choose your path in university?
Money. I mean, I was fortunate to have a few opportunities graduating from high school. When I got out of high school, my parents never lived here, so I was here with
Okay.
my siblings. So everybody went to UDC.
Okay.
They wash dishes at night. And they or they drive a cab and they make a little bit of money and go to UDC and get a degree doing something
And,
else.
and
So
explain to our non-DC people what's UDC.
right, University of District of Columbia. Which was inexpensive and affordable. And most of these cats, but a lot of people who were coming from Nigeria at that time, they actually had degrees, but their degrees wouldn't be respected or acknowledged in the
Yes.
U.S. until they got a degree in the U.S. So from when I graduated from high school, there was no plan for me to go anywhere else but UDC. It was just like, well, everybody goes to UDC, but
Yeah.
I was young when I actually graduated from high school when I was 16.
Oh wow.
And I did really well on the SATs and I had, good grades, even though I didn't take any AP courses, but I did well enough that I was accepted to actually every school I applied to, but I was accepted to Berkeley, which I really wanted to go to Berkeley,
Yes.
mainly because I wanted to get away from DC, but there was no money.
Yeah.
Brandeis, a few other schools, GW, gave me a full scholarship,
Nice.
so that's why I went there. It was something that I didn't have to, rely on anybody, to pay for my school, so it worked out.
And was there a culture shock there? Because for the people who don't know, GW is like the school all the diplomat children go. It's like
Yes. I mean,
big time.
yeah,
Yeah.
I met the children of several Nigerian presidents while I was there, including one of the presidents at the time who was Abacha, who was
Yes.
we had a coup d'etat, but yeah. So for me, and I also got accepted to Howard as well, but I didn't go to
Okay.
Howard because
Yeah.
Howard wasn't giving me any money. But
Yes.
for me, GW was really awakening. It was an awakening point because all this time I had spent running away from,
Being
my
African.
African self.
Yes.
Now I'm in this place where the black population is like less than 5%. So it was
Yeah.
now that was a culture shock.
Yes.
Because
In DC,
yes, in
and people have to
DC.
know, and the GW campus is like a city campus, so it's
Yes, and
it's in
it's
the
right
downtown.
downtown.
Yes, right
Yes,
downtown.
it's
So
like the White House is walking distance, Capitol is walking distance,
yeah, yeah,
monuments is pretty much over there by the monuments. So the whole area is Lily White, Georgetown, and that whole area. So for me, obviously coming from Nigeria, black, right? Coming from DC, the part of DC I grew up in black.
yes.
Junior high school,
Where
GW
did
was
you
like
live in
shot.
DC? Yeah, where did you live in DC?
I lived on Kennedy and Riggs Road. So like
Okay.
just right in the heart of uptown Northwest, I guess.
Yeah, that was a rough area back in the day.
Yes, around Fort Totten, from
Yeah,
Fort Totten. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely rough. I
A
mean,
lot of Jamaicans back in the day.
yes, a lot of the crack area was very much
Yeah,
alive
yeah.
during that
For
period.
those who don't know DC, 'cause a lot of people see the White House, they see this monument, they don't know. Even when I got here in DC, you know, there were no white people past 16th Street. 16th Street was
Yeah.
like the dividing line. you would not see. When I went to Howard, I would go months without seeing a white person, without
Yep.
seeing a white face in the old
Chocolate
DC.
City.
Yeah, there was a chocolate city. You would go months without seeing a face that was other than black. Blackest place you can imagine. So when he's talking about going to GW, he's crossing over 16th Street now.
Yes, very
He's
much.
going into this is like another country. You know, most black people in DC don't leave their block, you know, or their couple block radius. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yes.
And that's because of the violence. You know, they had block wars back in the day where this block would be warring against that block. So you find that a lot of youth in DC don't go to that part of the city. They've never
Right.
been to Georgetown. There's no metro over there by design.
Yes, by design.
Yeah, you can't take the metro over there. So DC was a very
Segregated.
segregated.
Yeah, very segregated.
City. So when he now is leaving his black area as a student and then he's going over into the white area, and now he's having to confront his being African, because the Africans are the ones you're going to see at these white institutions who
Exactly.
are excelling academically, and Caribbean people too. You'll find, you know, a sprinkling of Caribbean people, you know, at these what they call PWI, predominantly white.
Yes, I'm not even sure we had that terminology at the time, PWI, but that's what they
fairly
are.
new. That's fairly new. It's fairly new.
Yes. So you know, the program or the scholarship that I got, you know, was really targeting, you know, black children. So it was, you know, a lot of you know, black Americans from DC, from the DMV area actually, as well as, you know, other folks. So it really, you know, it brought me into a community, you know, within a micro community within GW, you know, of black people. We were definitely surrounded by a whole lot of others. So, you know, for me, it was really a point of confronting oneself, you know, one's, you know, doubts and you know, identity and what have you. Of course, GW had a you know, Pan-African presence. You know, there were Africans from different African countries, but I really didn't gravitate towards the Africans because, again, you know, my socialization at that point was really, you know, Black Americans, you know, Native, you know, Black Americans. So I wasn't really, you know, gravitating towards that initially, you know, and you know, but you know, going to GW, I saw a lot of overt racism, you know, and I'd heard about, read about racism, even in DC, you know, in you know, predominantly black area, all black area. You didn't see racism in that sense. I mean, you saw this systemic racism, but not the blatant racism. I mean, while I was GW, I mean, it was a time when, you know, some of the frat boys were, a group of black girls were walking by in the rain. They were throwing darts, you know, through the umbrellas. There was an incidence of people being recorded, you know, calling the black candidate who was running for student office the N-word. It was constantly like, it was constant, you know, blatant racism happening. You know, of course, that radicalized, I would say, a lot of us and myself. And of course, we're talking about this is 1989.
Okay.
You know, this is Public Enemy. You know, this is BDP. This is right. This is you know, the Malcolm X movie.
Yes.
You know, so the X-Clan, all that stuff. You know, it was a zeitgeist. You know, at the time, it was a time of race and of black consciousness. So being in that environment, combined with all of that, it definitely, you know, radicalized me in terms of appreciating, you know, my blackness and appreciating my African self and learning about my African self. One of the two pivotal books that I read at that time. I'm not sure which order I read them, but one was definitely the autobiography of Malcolm X.
Yes.
And the second one was the Crest Theory of Color Confrontation. Dr. Francis Cress Welsing.
Yes.
You know, so you know, both of those books really like put me on a path, you know, to recognize my person, my role and the importance of working for and working with and working for the benefit of African people. And everything else sort of comes from that. I mean, I became very much active in leadership of the Black community
Yes.
in GW, and it broadened. That's how I got connected with Ujima Shule. I actually
Okay.
started tutoring at Ujima when I was a student at
And
GW.
explain Ujamaa Shule for those, and I think that's the oldest, one of the oldest.
Yes, yes, it is the
Explain.
oldest independent African institution in the United States, founded by Baba Zulu, and it's a school that and all my children attended Ujima. It's a school that teaches children from an African point of view, and that's everything. You may think that math and science is neutral. It's not. everything everything has a lens, so it's
Yes.
important that our children see themselves from their own lens, and Ujima did that. And at the time, I was just looking for outlets, and I
Yes.
various organizations that I started or were part of, and somehow stumbled upon Ujima. I said, it's right here in DC, and of course there's always a need for volunteers, college students, and what have you. But yeah, I mean,
Right.
I got involved with a lot of organizations and started a lot of organizations on campus and outside of campus, really, promoting Pan-Africanism, Black nationalism, Black
Hmm.
power. Of course, in the Million Man March, happened, actually, it was towards my time, end of my time at GW, but I was still in the area when the Million
Okay.
Man March happened. So yeah, I was one of the folks that was leading a large rally of folks behind me, down there. A wonderful, wonderful, incredible day, thing to witness.
Yes. I missed that. I came I think the year after
Yes, yes, yes.
to visit. Yeah. I missed that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that was, the environment and the time, and everything, and and individuals that I met while I was there really came together in a way that I don't even know if I had gone to Howard, if I would be who I am, if I would have the
Yes.
perspective that I am. I definitely wouldn't have had the same exact experience. It may have led
Yes.
to the same place end of the day, but I really can't say.
Yeah.
Everything came together to give me the perspective that I have and I'm able to share with people. And of course, that really taught me how to work with Black people, which is a skill. It's an
It
important
is.
skill we all have to learn. We're oftentimes not patient enough, loving enough, compassionate enough about each other's
Yes.
struggle.
Yes.
We tend to be dictatorial in a lot of different things and
Yes.
judgmental. You know,
Yes.
there are always going to be there are always going to be people trying to divide you. That's the easiest thing people
Yes.
do. And it doesn't matter what it is. I don't care what it is. I mean, if somebody is trying to separate you from another human being based on something, and that thing that they're trying to use to separate you is actually targeting a vulnerable group. It's a formula. They find a vulnerable group that becomes the boogeyman, and they
Yes.
tell you that that's the cause of all your problems,
Yes.
while of course they're themselves victims of the same system. And they use it to divide us. I mean, we see it outside of the Black community, but we definitely see it within the Black community as well.
Yes. Divide and
So
rule is the only plan.
it's age old, and it works. It's amazing. It works every
Perfectly.
time.
Yeah. It
I
works
mean,
every time.
whether it's Igbos versus Yorubas, whether it's Christians versus Muslims, whether it's folks from different uh, blocks, Crips, blood, whatever. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter what it is. They're ultimately trying. Now we have this FBA thing. It's all about divide and conquer. Because if the people were to recognize that there's only one enemy, liberation will be a reality. But as long as they keep teaching you that this person is the problem, not us who have the power, who have the means. No, it's them. They're the ones that are making you, poor, or keeping you from having jobs. See what's happening in South Africa, where they're attacking other
Yeah.
Africans, and they're and the Dutch settlers and their the fourth their children are joining with the black South Africans and attacking Nigerians and Ghanaians and Zimbabweans. And I'm like, this is happening right now just because they told them that, no, it's not us, the white people, that control 85% of the economics of Nigeria. No, it's not us that own 80% of the farmland. It's these immigrants that just came yesterday who are taking your jobs.
Exactly. It's sad. It's sad. I became, came into my consciousness at Howard, in the Rastafari community, and what you say about organizing, I had to learn in that community. And I thought a lot of the challenges, let me be diplomatic and say the challenges were unique to Rastafari until I was introduced to the wider Pan-African community. And then I fit in so easily because I could identify those same challenges in the larger Pan-African community. I was like, okay, this is a Black people challenge. This is not unique to any Rastafari or group. And this is why, I have subscribers from all over the world, and I tell them, this channel, we focus on the Pan-African root, of Rastafari and Pan-African affairs. And I say that we have to do that because we have to feed the root, you know what I mean, so that the tree can grow. And we have unique problems and unique healing that has to happen, that we can't even unite with the rest of the world until we address our own unique issues. And I have a comment here. I'm going to introduce you to my comment section. They like to stir the pot. So,
yeah, I see that. I see some of that.
Yeah, don't take it personal. We don't take it personal, but Brethren says Igbo tradition doesn't like their women to marry outside of their culture and would typically prefer them to date a white man than an African American due to stereotypes. So how would you respond to that?
It's not true. I mean, I will tell you that in Igbo culture, let me start from the micro. So in Igbo culture, our marriage traditions are based on diversification, mixing of genetics. So in Igbo land, you're not allowed to marry anybody from your village.
Okay.
You must marry somebody from outside the village.
Okay.
So it's the idea, of course, is the genetic part of it.
Yes.
There is always a preference to marry another Igbo person.
Yes.
Because of keeping the culture going, but short of being of marrying an Igbo person, they would rather the mate, whether it's male or female, is more welcome if they're Black, regardless of where they're from. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have colorism and internalized racism among Africans on the continent. Igbos are no different. We are still educating our people in Nigeria with the colonial education. Most Nigerians will still believe that the white man's ice is colder. It's not Igbos teaching anybody to prefer white men or white women or what have you. But the same sickness we see here in our people here in the United States and all over the world is in Nigeria. Igbos are no different from that. And also, this is an interesting part. Most Igbos wouldn't make a distinction between the two. What I mean by that is most Igbos on the continent, let me be specific. Most Igbos living on the continent, they don't self-identify as being Black in the way that we see it. You know what I mean? If you're a Black person who is a Black American or Black Canadian or Jamaican or what have you, most people tend to look at you based on your culture. That the idea of race, of course, is a construct in and of itself. We, prior to the Europeans coming, prior to the colonization, we didn't define ourselves based on race. We defined ourselves based on our nation, our ethnicity. You know, and to a large extent, that still exists. So if you're outside of my ethnic group, there's not a whole lot of distinction naturally there, and that's sort of hard for folks to fathom. But you know, what you have is, of course, a global system of white supremacy, and unless you educate people. But guess what? You know, when Igbo person sees, you know, a black person from America. My wife is a black American. You know, when she first came to Igbo land, I mean, they were just staring at her like they were amazed. Well, first of all, you know my wife, you know, she's very natural, very cultural, traditional clothes all the time. And they were running away from their traditions, right? They were running away from their language, their culture, the way of dressing, just, you know, way of being. And she came home and embraced all of it. You know, and my cousins were watching her like, you know, clothes that they had put in a trunk they hadn't worn for years. All of a sudden, they started pulling them out because she walking around with lapas and beautiful African wear and blouses, and they're like, they ask her, why are you wearing this? We don't even wear this stuff, and she's like, it's beautiful, and it made them like, you know what, it is beautiful.
Nice.
You know, so that would not happen with a European.
Yes.
So let's be clear on that, and not, you know, and not confuse the two.
Yeah,
sure.
let me the brother, and this is one of our regular Lion Pride. I know he wasn't trying to be disrespectful. He said, I wasn't being disrespectful. It was based on anecdotal evidence or personal experience, as I dated an Igbo, and my best man and my current wife was a Yoruba brother. So I'm steeped in the culture. And then he said, my Igbo girlfriend's mother wanted her to leave me when she saw I drove a hoopty ride and wasn't wealthy.
Yes. I mean, you know, a man is a provider, and there's no question about that in Igbo culture.
That's not Igbo. That would be Caribbean, you know, from a certain class. You know, that's, I think, more of a class issue. But yeah, so continue. So you're culturalized in university. You become this conscious mind in university. And when is it now that you really start doing a deep dive into your own Nigerian history?
Right. I mean, I think, you know, well, after, actually, while I was at GW, I went home, you know, because I really hadn't been back home at that point since I was little.
Okay.
Since I left, you know, the last time. So, you know, going back and, you know, connecting with folks and the culture, that really began to bring me back to appreciating that culture.
How old were you when you went back, and what year was it?
That would have been around 1991.
Okay.
So 1991, I would have been, you know, around 19 or so.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, really an adult for the first time at home.
Yes.
And you know, really being able to appreciate. I mean, Nigeria is absolutely beautiful. I mean,
yes.
You know, one thing that I like to let people know about Nigeria is that Nigerians are disproportionately represent all Black people on the planet. Let me explain what I mean by that. The population of Nigeria right now is so that 1 out of every 5 Black people on planet Earth, 1 out of every 5 Black people on the planet Earth is in Nigeria right now.
Wow.
So to try to wrap your head around that, it is a huge, significant portion of the Black population.
Yes.
Of course, we know that, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, that a large percentage of the folks that were brought to the Americas as part of the world, you know, during the Ma'afa were, you know, from Nigeria, not just Igbos, but Nigerians in general. Nigerians represent about 28% of all Black people. Now, we know Africa has 54 or so countries.
Yes.
Of all the 54 countries, this one country, represents 25% of all Africans that were brought to
Wow.
the West. So, no other country comes close in terms of its significance to the population in the diaspora than Nigeria, based on those two numbers, based on those two figures. That's why when you go to DNA test, I don't even have to tell you which test you. The first country on that test is going to be Nigerian. I already know that, and because the history,
Yes.
gives us that information. But it is a massive country. It is diverse. It is, it's not just diverse in its population, but diverse in its topography. I mean, we
Yes.
have desert, we have rainforest, we have savanna. It's
Yes.
huge, and it's vast. And it's when I hear about overpopulation of the African continent, even the most populated African country isn't overpopulated.
Yeah. Yeah.
You go vast areas where you see no one.
And
But
people who haven't been to Africa, it's hard to imagine the scale. I remember
yes,
the first time I traveled to Africa, flying over the Sahara Desert and falling asleep, getting up, and you look down, it's still
still
desert. You know
desert.
what I
Yep.
mean? It's just you can't, the scope and the scale, because remember, you can fit the entire United States of America into the Sahara Desert.
Yes.
A lot of people don't realize, because it's so small on the map, the Mercado map, Africa is so small. Until you go to the continent and you look at some of these vistas and you fly across the continent, then you get an inkling of how massive in scale this continent is.
Yes, they definitely did a big number of on us, and they're still doing it with the Mercado map, because it makes Africa seem like this small thing. And in terms of continents, Eurasia, which is the continent, because Europe is not a continent, and
Yes.
neither is Asia. But
Yes.
Eurasia combined may be the largest, but it's closely followed by Africa.
Yes.
But Asia by itself is actually smaller than Africa. So it's important to have that perspective. It's very deliberate, obviously, why they make Africa seem so small. But Nigeria, is massive, and beautiful, and culturally, and everything is just so incredible. And we have, my wife, we have a travel business. We take people to the continent,
Yes.
not
Yes.
just Nigeria, but all over. But
Yes.
the Nigeria trip is one of the ones I really, love the most, because bringing people, Nigeria is a very economically dominant place.
Yes.
We don't, unlike other countries, tourism is a very, very small, I should say international tourism is a very, very small part of the economy compared to Kenya,
Yes.
Egypt, or even Ghana. Nigerians don't really care about international tourism, because we don't need it, right?
Yes.
I mean, the tourism that happens in Nigeria is primarily Nigerians traveling in Nigeria.
Yes.
So
Yes.
for me, bringing people internationally into Nigeria is like, wow, just really introduce them to something they're not going to see. We have the oldest populated places, one of them anyway, is in a place in Nigeria, which is one of the first, one of the oldest caves, I should say, where they have, you hear about obviously Ethiopia,
Yes.
but one of the oldest civilizations documented is in a place called Iloru, which is in Ondo State. They have, cave drawings and human remains they're dated to 11,000 BC.
Wow.
And then you have the Knox culture, Iboku culture. The oldest iron smelting site is in a place called Leja, Enugu. They have iron ores. If you don't know how iron is made, when you
Yes.
smelt iron for weapons or tools or whatever the case may be, the byproduct is iron ores, and iron ores last forever, right? So
Yes.
there are iron ores that are found in this, remote village in Nigeria that are carbon dated 4,000 BC.
Wow.
So you're talking about not just people living, but
Yeah.
technology. You know what I mean? A lot of folks want to believe that Europeans were the ones that to teach us how to use, iron and whatnot. But no, we taught them. That's why they had. That's why they brought the Africans. Initially before the colonization, Africans were the ones teaching the Europeans how to make
Yes.
these
Yes.
tools. The culture is there, and I really love to bring people to that history and that culture that they've been kept from deliberately. Because if you know how old, and this is Nigeria is just one place. All of Africa, you're talking about Mozambique. If you really know how rich and ancient and how powerful and diverse, Egypt is beautiful. Kemet, is beautiful.
Yes.
But before Kemet is a child of Africa. It's not
Yes.
the father or the mother. It's a child of
Yes.
Africa. So
Yes.
everything that Kemet, was, 5,000 years ago, it came from a much older cultures deeper into the
Yes.
continent. And those cultures are represented in places like Nigeria and in
Yes.
Mozambique
Yes.
and
Yes.
South Africa.
I had a historian on the channel, and he was saying that a lot of the inhabitants of Kemet came from West Africa, when Kemet was in its boom period. And, they were attracted, of course, the regular floods. And there was, weather conditions in the rest of the continent. It was like a magnet pulling people from all over. And a lot of West Africans migrated to Kemet.
Well, it's actually it's the other way around.
Okay.
Yes, it's actually the other way around. There's been several,
Well,
when
he's asserting that they came to Kemet. He said they also went back to
yes,
West
yes,
Africa when
yes,
Kemet fell, but he's saying
yes,
that his thesis was that these, that Kemet, because he was also talking about when the Sahara was green,
right, right.
and there were civilizations in the Sahara long before Kemet, and that Kemet was like a magnet that drew people for thousands of years. And then
Absolutely.
when Kemet fell, then they migrated back, first to Lake Chad area, and then from Lake Chad dispersed back into Western Africa. So since we're in the ancient realm, give us some of the pre-colonial history, because I don't like to start history. I brought this brother here to educate us on Nigeria, and he's a perfect person to do it because this brethren is well read, and you can hear well grounded. But I want my audience to know how important Nigeria is to when we talk about Black liberation. And when you know how important and how ancient Nigeria is, you realize why the Europeans have programmed the Nigerian population. I was watching a journalist that said 95% of Nigerian media right now is funded by the West. You know what I
Yes.
mean? So you will understand why Nigeria is anti what's happening in the Sahel, why Nigeria has been a thorn in the Pan-African uprising, why, I see someone talking about Ken Saro-Wiwa and what happened with Chevron and Shell. We're going to get to all of that. But before we get to the colonial part, we always want to start with the humanity of who we are as African people. So I want you to take us into the pre-colonial, some of the great civilization. Can we talk about Benin? We talk about all of these, Oyo State. We talk about, it overlaps because there were no colonial lines, the great Yoruba nations. Talk to us about the pre-colonial history of Nigeria.
Yeah, there's a lot of history there. You mentioned Benin.
Yes.
One of the greatest nations the earth has known. Um, you know, so let me make a distinction because this confuses a lot of people. There is a country right now called the Republic of Benin, the Federal
Yes.
Republic of Benin. That is not Nigeria.
Yes.
That is a country that was formerly Dahomey.
Yes.
They adopted the name Benin, in the 80s, I believe. So they that's actually a different population. Now the Benin Empire was large enough that it encompassed part of Dahomey at the time, but
Okay.
the heart of Benin is in Nigeria. Now Benin, Nigeria, border each other directly.
Yes,
But
yes.
at the time of the Benin Empire, I mean, it encompassed a lot of Nigeria, a lot of the southeastern central region and southwestern region as well. And you know, the main city, Benin City, had a wall around it.
Yes.
That
Talk
is,
about it.
yes, that wall is longer than the Great Wall of China,
People don't know.
and remnants of that wall still exist. Unfortunately, Europeans, you know, when they broke through the wall and looted all the riches of Benin, and over time, you know, people who don't have a appreciation or who are confused or whatever the case may be, you know, began to pilfer the wall and pieces of the wall are parts of people's houses, but there's still remnants of the wall here and there in Benin. You have the Nok people. The Nok culture is one that's um, about a thousand, well, actually a thousand BC is the oldest record we have of the Nok culture. We don't really know much about the Nok culture, but we know they were in what is now the northern part of Igbo land, the Anambra
Okay.
area. You know, then Igbo Ukwu. You have the Oyo Empire. You have the Bonu Empire, Calabar, Boni, Badagry. I mean, there were so many nations that inhabited what is now Nigeria. I mean,
Nigeria.
and you know how these things, you know, sometimes it was one nation would rise and overtake another one. And there are a lot of different pop culture references that folks can sort of look at. But the one being the Woman King, right?
Yes.
Which is based on the time when the Oyo Empire encompassed what was at the time uh, 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 um, at the time the area near Ouida, before the European carving up, dividing Nigeria in what is now Benin, formerly Dahomey, the Oyo Empire encompassed all that, and these were horse riders. I mean, these
Yes.
were the masses of horses, so they were able to grow the Oyo Empire vastly. You know, even in fact, if you go to of course, Nigeria is here. Right next to Nigeria is Benin. And right next to Benin is Togo. Right next to Togo is Ghana. You can find Yoruba people in Ghana. That's how
Yes.
vast the Yoruba,
Vast.
the Oyo Empire was. So there are all these empires that date back, thousands of years.
And we have to let the people know that these were high civilizations,
Yes.
clean streets, lampposts.
Yep.
You know, when the early Europeans came, no crime, you know what I mean, clean. They marveled at the level of sophistication, sanitation, because a lot of time we think about African empires, we're thinking about, we visualize the kind of straw hut village, the thatch roof, and we don't realize these were city states. You know what I mean? A lot
Absolutely.
of them are very advanced city states that were existing that made anything in Europe pale in comparison. This is why this history was hidden from us.
Right.
And they try to make it look like Europe civilized
I
Africa.
mean, Europeans will come to places like Oyo or the Caliphates in the north, and they will see, sewage systems that were enclosed, that ran through houses, sanitation systems, and
Yes.
and things that while they were still using chamber pots in Europe, Africans had indoor plumbing.
Yes.
The vaccination, surgery, C-sections. These are
Yes.
things that Europeans were documenting when they were visiting. Initially, because it didn't start out as slavery wasn't like the first thing that happened.
Yes.
And there's a whole history with Abu Bakr the second, and his brother Mansa Musa, and I can get into the whole history of how Europeans even came to Africa when they came to Africa. But for a long time, it was really like coming to higher culture to learn. Before they eventually learned enough to know how to to interject themselves and
Yeah.
sabotage and eventually, conquer. But initially, Africa was teaching Europeans how to be civilized. But these ancient civilizations, unfortunately, because well, one, because of course Europeans destroyed everything that they saw, but because of the tropics, um, the artifacts that you get are going to be either iron, like you've seen all the Benin
Yes.
bronzes and so on and so forth, or I mentioned Elijah, the iron ores, or pottery, but a lot of the written tapestry fabrics, were lost. Europeans didn't teach us how to
Yes.
write. Igbos had at least three distinct written writing traditions, and other cultures did as well. So a lot of these things were lost during colonial times, but now, we're really, able to go back and dig deep. I mean, there are major excavations happening in a place called Iboukwu, which is one of the ancient city states in Igbo land, where, I mean, traditions are very, very similar to, what you saw in ancient Kemet. The kings were buried underground with all this jewelry and valuables and just high culture, complexity of governing. Even the idea of having a democracy of sorts,
Yes.
comes from Igbo land, which is not necessarily one person, one vote, but Igbos don't, unlike um, other uh, empires or nations at the time, we didn't have kings that were kings because their father was a king or so on and so
Yes.
forth. It wasn't hereditary. It was a vote. The elders and the dignitaries in the community would choose a new king whenever the king deceased. So it was a democratic process. You had to get the popular vote, if you will, in
Yeah.
order to rule the people. So people were ruling with the mandate of the people. That's our culture. So
Okay.
a lot of those systems were lost, were put aside when Europeans came, and we got the colonial era that we got. But it's a very, very rich history, and it goes back thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and we're just now trying to unearth a lot of that history. And more, the deeper we dig, the older it gets, and that's
Yeah.
the fascinating thing. We're very, very early in that process.
Yes, yes. I had a Igbo Rastafari brethren on this platform. Big up Ras Mike Pam. He said the Igbo are the first people on the planet. He said that Igbo, I can't remember what he said Igbo mean, but it was something like the first man or so. I can't remember. What does Igbo mean? Do you know what Igbo?
I don't know what Igbo means. I mean, I can
Okay.
see an Igbo man saying that though. But I mean, but I can tell you this. So uh, my uncle, my mother's
Yeah.
brother, did a DNA test. I'm not really sure why he did it, but he did it. So, of course, DNA said 100% Igbo. But what it did was his paternal line, it identified a very interesting figure in history who was either a forefather or shared the same ancestry, and that's Ramses the Third of Egypt.
Really?
Yes. So, and that's part of my literal DNA. So Igbos go back to ancient Kemet. And
Okay.
there's a whole history about how that happened. That's why I was talking about the migration. Obviously there's been a back and forth, but
Yes.
there was a time when the Nile Valley, which goes all the way to Uganda, a lot of people think it stops in Egypt. No, it goes all the way to
Yes.
Uganda. When foreigners began to invade from the north, or whether it was the Assyrians or whoever, they it caused people to go further south, which in our own perception of the world at the time was actually going north, because really we see the world upside down, but that's a whole other
Yes.
conversation. So people migrated deeper and further, and those migrations started 20,000 years ago.
Yes.
So these are not new. These are not new phenomena. The population of West Africa is at least 20,000 years old.
Okay.
And a lot of the ancestry comes from that region. That's how old the civilizations along the Nile Valley really are. And again, we're just really beginning to unearth a lot of this history.
Yes, yes. African archaeology has a long way to go. How do you feel about the claims by some Igbo that the Igbo are descendants of the African Hebrews?
Well, I would say there is some truth to that, but it's not in the way that they think of it. Like I said, the Hebrews were not a people foreign to the Egyptian population. They were. It
Yes,
wasn't a racial thing,
yes,
right?
yes, yes,
Right. It was a religious sect
yes, yes.
among the
The
ancient Kemites. So
Kemet,
they
yes,
were Kemetic people
yes.
that were not European. They're not the folks you're seeing in Israel now.
No,
And when people migrated from that region, they tended to migrate based on their religious beliefs or their trade.
yes,
It was one of those two things. So there is some documentation truth obviously I just mentioned my DNA. It literally goes back to
yes,
ancient Kemet. So you can see these people being people who follow that particular religious belief
yes,
migrating into the area. And
yes,
there's a place called Uri in Igbo land, which is one of the oldest. They say they're the oldest kingdom in Igbo land, and they say, and I've been there. As a Mecca, Uri is the current king. I think he's like the 54th or something like that in that lineage of
mm-hmm,
kings. And according to their own telling of the history and how it's been documented over time, they came from ancient Kemet, and that first king that founded that kingdom, you know, he identified as Hebrew according to
okay,
this is their telling of it. So this is
yes,
we're talking about
yes,
thousands of years
yes,
of history. That's and that's so it is documented in various areas. It's not the way people talk about it. It's not like we
yes,
don't come from the people who are in Israel. We have no relation to that part of. We're
yeah,
talking about Hebrews way
yeah,
before there were even
yeah.
Europeans
You're
walking
not
around.
talking about the Polish and the Russians
No,
and
no,
the
we're definitely
Khazars
not. We're
and those
definitely not.
people. Yeah, yeah.
We're definitely not. But
And that's
there are Hebrew practicing people in Igbo land right now. Many of them
yes,
actually.
yes, yes, yes. Fascinating history. So talk about the colonial incursion. Of course, one of my favorite experiences in life was reading Things Fall Apart by
Yeah.
Chinua Achebe. That opened my eyes as a young freshman at Howard University, reading that in my humanities class. That was one of the books that kind of really opened my eyes. You know what I mean? But talk about the
Yes.
colonial incursion.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite books as well. Really, gets into Igbo culture as it was back then. The first part of Nigeria that the Europeans encountered were, the states around Oyo or Yoruba land in the south western region, along the coast, basically. And of course, Europeans did not come initially as slave traders or anything like that. They were coming to learn as we thought, and being open people, being African people of good spirit. They
Yes.
were very much welcome. Of course, we know they took advantage of that, but eventually, when they began the conquest of the continent, they wanted to move into the hinterlands, the deeper part of Nigeria. Um, Initially, they did try to go across the Niger into Igbo land, but the thing about Igbos, because unlike Yorubas or the Oyos and other nations in the Benin, where you had one ruler over a vast area. Igbo land wasn't structured that way. Igbo land was not a one nation. It was a
Yes.
federation of city-states. So what they would see is that they would come to, and when they begin to conquer, when they actually entered the charade, if you will, right?
Yes. Yes.
After this, the quote unquote slave trade was over, in particular, they began to colonize after the Belgium Conference. They began to colonize our,
Yes.
that's what really began that
The
the
scramble.
colonial era is exactly the
Yes.
scramble of the 19th century. So they initially came to Yoruba land and colonized that area, Lagos, that region. They eventually moved east, across the Niger, but again, they would conquer one, Igbo community. And usually it wasn't like an armed conquering. It was initially, for the use Christianity as
Yes.
a primary tool. They would work their way, get people's trust, and then before you know it, they got the whole, but they found that they had to keep doing that over and over and over again because there was no one ruler. So they were frustrated. So what they did was they moved north into what is now Hausa land, Fulani land, and
Yes.
where you had caliphates that had singular rulers, and eventually being able to infiltrate those communities, they used them to conquer the rest of the southern part. Eventually,
Yes.
after
Yes.
they used them, they now conquer them as well. Which is
Yes.
the modes that create the missionaries, who are I would say the first line of offense for Europeans. The missionaries didn't come to Igbo land until around 1910. So long after they had already been, long after the Belgium Conference, long after they had already been in other parts of Nigeria, the missionaries came and they destabilized community. And that's, of course, things fall apart
Yes.
is telling of that time, because
Yes.
it's not about an army attacking Igbo land. The
Yes.
way they conquered Igbo land is very well told in that book. It was really conquering the spirit of the people, and once you broke the people down, and broke the next generations down, they didn't even need arms at that point.
Yes.
So that's really we didn't have this type of armed struggle. Not that there weren't rebellions, of course, that happened during colonial. There were many rebellions throughout Nigeria, especially Nigerian women, both in Yoruba land, Igbo land. They were giving them those Europeans, British headache. I mean, it was constant, protests, fighting, all
Yes.
types of
Yes.
revolts happening. But at the end of the day, we didn't end the colonial era through that fighting. It was really a negotiated exit, which is negotiated, really designed to create a country that would not work. I mean, that was their intent, because the Igbos were their own people, Yorubas are their own people, Hausas their own people, and they knew that ethnic identity was central to those people. So by
Yes.
forcing them to now function in one unit, the fact that the common language, the official language of Nigeria is English, tells you a lot. Literally, the
Mhm.
only way an Igbo man and a Yoruba man can speak to each other is through English, because most Igbos don't speak Yoruba, and
Yes.
vice versa. And same with the Hausa. So literally, the country was only going to be able to be held together by the systems that the Europeans, the colonizers, left behind, which creates a country in their mind that could never unite against them. Time will tell if that's the case, but that's definitely the plan.
I think that's going to change with the young people that are rising today. Talk about, before we get to modern affairs and what's happening, talk about the Arab colonization, because we always talk about the European, but the Arab influence, especially in the north,
Right.
the Muslim expansion of Islam predates the
Absolutely.
Christian, by hundreds of years. So talk about what was the first contacts with the Islamic revolution.
I'm gonna have to in terms of Islam, I'm gonna have to go back to Kemet again.
Okay.
At that time, it was actually Egypt.
Yes.
When the Arabians, conquered North Africa, it was around 300 AD.
Mm-hmm.
When it began to take, much of that territory. Of course, they,
Yes.
one of the first places they conquered was Egypt and a few other areas, going, further west. And their plan was to continue south, where the rest of Africa was. Obviously,
Yes.
the Nile being a major, throwaway for that. But the Nubians resisted,
Yes.
especially the Nubian queens. They resisted,
Yeah.
and what ended up happening is that eventually there was a treaty that was signed around 600 AD. There was a treaty that was signed that would stop the Arabian Empire from moving further. So, in other words, from continuing their war against the Nubians. In
Yes.
exchange for that, the Nubians would agree to give them a tribute every year in exchange for the Arabs not going further south. That's why that line exists, there. That's why, the line between Egypt and what is now Sudan, and
Yes.
all along there exists is because of that treaty.
Yes.
So, in order to get the Arabians to honor that their side of the treaty, Africans, particularly the Nubians, agreed to send them, um, you know, people, slaves. But I hate to use the term slave, but it's really not the ideal term. It's really more like indentured servitude. But they did what they did with them, and you have to remember at this time, the Arabians were enslaving everybody.
Yes.
They had more European slaves than they had African slaves.
Yes.
The
Yes.
Arab slave, of course, and of course, they would castrate their slaves so they wouldn't, populate. But
Yes.
Persia. I mean, there are several empires from that area, between Persia and Arabia, and they demanded that tribute, and they got it initially. The Nubians were able to send, their own people, but eventually, you know, why not go here again? We're not talking about any sense of blackness. My nation is
Yes.
my nation, right? So
Yes.
they will go south and further west and capture people, and that began the Arab, slave trade.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of Africans, moving, down that trade route, and it spread, of course. The Arabians themselves, the Arabs did not move further south, but they brought, their culture was sort of, was brought south. Their religion was being perpetuated.
Yes.
So a lot of the countries like Chad, Niger, northern part of Nigeria, those ethnic groups, the Hausas, the Fulani, many of whom were already nomadic and moved about, picked up that culture, and they were colonized, religiously speaking, that way. So, and unfortunately, part of that colonization made them feel less and less connected with other Africans. So they were more, you see somebody who looks like a black person, they identify themselves as Arab. They have no Arabian blood in them, but their religion, the Islam, is central to their existence. So it allowed the Arab slave trade to continue for a long time. Of course, it wasn't as devastating. It wasn't as devastating to African people as the European slave trade, but the Arab slave trade was going on, around the time, that's how Europeans, sort of got the idea of transporting people. One of the greatest, I said the richest man to ever live, Mansa Musa,
Yeah.
from Mali. This was around 1300. He did a Hajj. He was, at that time, Songhai and Mali, all of that was already, Islamic. and he was definitely an Islamic kingdom.
Yes.
So he did a pilgrimage to to Mecca, which of course went through Egypt, and he was so wealthy, and he had so much gold. The gold mines of Mali was just like incredible, and he had so much gold with him that he brought with him that he was literally destroying the economy of every place he touched, because he would show up with like all this gold. So when he got to Egypt, it literally caused what's the economic
A crash.
a crash?
Economic
Yes,
crash at the price
yes,
of gold
yes,
for years.
yes, and their whole economy was based on trading this thing, and here we are, and the market is now flooded with this gold. So
Hmm.
unfortunately, that incident, of course, there's a whole lot that comes with that. He built Timbuktu, in terms of universities, when he came back, but that incident, it taught the world, particularly it taught Europeans, that Africa had a lot of gold. And
Yes.
that's what they were looking for when they came to West Africa. They were trying to
Yes.
find out what was the source of that gold. We know how the story continued, but the interaction between Africans, early interaction between Africans and Arabs, definitely was critical to how Europeans even came to be in the position to colonize
Yes.
Africa. But it's a very important history, and a lot of places we hear about now, like Iran, Iraq, were black communities. I mean,
Yes.
talking about like black populations. One of the oldest books that I've read is called the Glory of the Black Race. It's called the Glory of the Black Race. It was written in 800 A.D. It's called the Glory of the Black Race,
Hmm.
written in 800 A.D. So
Wow.
in present day Iraq, you can still find it. It's actually still in print. I mean, they've been it's been reprinted all these years. And I recommend you get a
Definitely.
copy of that book, because it really tells you about what was going on during that time. Of course, by that time the Arab slave trade was very much in effect, but a lot of Africans were already in what is now Arabia, in that area. But definitely those interactions has shaped what Nigeria is right now, because the northern part of Nigeria is essentially Arab. I mean, they, Yorubas and entire houses in Fulani, they speak Arabic. They don't speak any other language. They have their own cultural differences, but their Islam is central to everything that they do. Sharia law and so on and so forth is actually you know, is the thing, is the way
Yes.
of life
Yes.
in that
Yes.
part of Nigeria. So Nigeria is very, very different. Being in Jos and places like that is very, very different from being in Oyo or being in Enugu. It's very, very. You have almost different countries, right?
Yes.
Within one
Yes.
country because of that.
And the Europeans often took the leadership, I understand, from the north for the military and for the government from the Hausa. So
Yes,
they made sure that they mixed it up in terms of how they kept the country together, kept the people separated.
right.
Um, Boy, the time
Absolutely.
just flying. The time is
I
flying.
know, I know, I know, I know.
I didn't get to the modern,
I know. We
but
haven't even. Yeah, I mean, I told you it's going to be a long.
we got this is part one. But before we go anywhere, and I'm going to ask just for a little bit of overtime because I want to get to what's happening in Nigeria now. We set the context, and we're going to have to skip over a lot.
Right.
But talk about the independence, Nnamdi Azikiwe.
Yes.
Ken Sarah we was, I mean, Ken Nnamdi Azikiwe, to my understanding, was a Garveyite.
Right. Absolutely. He went to
Talk,
Lincoln University in DC in
yeah,
the
So
U.S.
talk to us about Nnamdi Azikiwe and because Nigeria started very promising.
Yes.
Talk in your opinion where things went off the rails.
Yeah. That's a very good question. Probably in a few spots. Yes, Nigeria started as a Pan African project. Nnamdi Azikiwe was very Pan African, very much. He was a counterpart of Kwame Nkrumah, of course.
Yes.
And all these giants were together organizing themselves and planning themselves. And we just celebrated African Day now, which used to be
Yes.
African Liberation Day, which actually started out as being Africa Freedom Day
Yes.
when it first started out. But during these conferences, and they were planning, what Africa would be, and when Nigeria first became independent, Nnamdi Azikiwe was the first president of Nigeria, but because um, he tried to change the way the country was working so that it would begin to be more independent of European powers. Different figures came into play, and they demanded that he step down and allow somebody that was much more aligned with neo-colonialism. I mean, I'll put it that way, just to
Yes, of
save
course.
time, But he's definitely one of the founding fathers of Nigeria, and he's the founder of the Nsukka University. A staunch Pan Africanist who sincerely believed that Nigeria could be, part of this movement to get to empower Africans as opposed to simply being a tool that continues to empower Europe in the sense that as we send our raw materials and buy back their finished goods, we continue to empower Europe, as African countries, especially francophone countries, store their very treasure, their bank, their central bank
Yes.
remains in Europe. Every dime they make, every tax dime they make, every good that they export, the French benefit from it more. This system of neocolonialism is something that he tried to resist, but unfortunately, I'll say greed, lack of
Yes.
foresight. Same reason why they chased same reason why they chased Kwame Nkrumah out of uh,
Ghana.
Ghana. It's funny,
Yes.
if you go to Ghana now, of course, the new statue of Kwame Nkrumah is one of the biggest things. One is
Yes.
his house is one of the biggest social attractions. He's
Yes.
a national hero, but at the
Yes.
time of his death, at the time he was removed, he was very, very unpopular.
Yes.
The Ghanaians had turned against him,
Yes.
because he was pushing Pan Africanism. He felt as if all Africans could come to Ghana and develop themselves and grow their economies. He wanted to have a free movement throughout the continent. He wanted to have a shared currency and
Yeah.
and
One
and, and,
military.
and one Africa. And the idea of
Yes.
one Africa is not a new thing. So, and
No.
people like Nnamdi Azikiwe and Kwame Nkrumah and Albert Thomas Sankara and many others, moved in that direction. That people unfortunately moved against them, because they
Yes.
thought they knew better. Of course, now everybody look back and say, "Oh, wow, he's a great hero." It's almost like the way
Yes.
people treat MLK, Martin Luther King, in the United States.
Exactly.
When he was
Exactly.
alive, he was a pariah, but now he has a monument. So anyway, but we're in an era now where I think the younger generation is getting tired. We unfortunately still operate using a Eurocentric neo-colonial system.
Mm-hmm.
I was having a conversation with my brothers the other day, and this won't take too long. I know our time is short. They were talking about why the Nigerian political system isn't functioning. There's so
Yes.
much corruption, and I thought of something that I think it was one of I think it was actually I'm trying to see who talked about this, but anyway, there was something I was reading anyway, and it spoke to the fact that you know Africans, you know, particularly Nigerians specifically, when we became independent, the only model that we experienced was totalitarianism. You know, we were not voting when Europeans were
Yes.
running Nigeria. There was no participation. You know, you were just there to keep their system going, to keep the resources going in Europe. So when they put the houses in charge of the military and put the Yorubas in charge of certain government positions and put Igbos in certain positions, the whole idea was to keep the funding and the resources flowing to Europe. So we didn't learn, you know, if it was a thing to learn, democracy or self-governance. We didn't have
Yes.
self-governance under them.
Yes.
So what we had was totalitarianism. That's why we have a lot of leaders now who still believe in their personal pockets, because we really haven't had that freedom since Europeans came. So we really need to, you know, move away from everything we think they taught us, right? And move
Yes.
into a new era where we are defining our own faith, because they didn't want to teach us anything that would be beneficial to us, because it would be detrimental to them.
What happened to Nnamdi Azikiwe?
Oh, he lived, and you know, he lived to be a old man. You know, died, but of course he in the name of national unity, you know, stepped aside. And he became an educator. He started the University of Nsukka. So he
Okay.
grew the university system in Nigeria. He felt as if education would give rise to a better prepared people. So he really focused on education towards the
Okay.
rest of his life. He stayed away from, because he wasn't trying to agitate in a way that would bring friction among the Nigerian population. So he was you know, he was committed to this country that he was the first president of. He was
Yes.
committed to it, you know, succeeding as a country despite all these shortcomings.
Was he Yoruba? What was his
No, he's Igbo. Igbo. He's
Igbo.
Igbo.
Okay,
Yeah, yes.
okay.
And there has not been an Igbo president of Nigeria since.
Since that
Yep.
time. Wow.
Yep.
And it's very sad because Nigeria, as we say, the potential. I've been to Nigeria one time, very briefly. I was flying from Addis Ababa to Accra, and we had engine trouble and had to make an emergency landing in Nigeria. And,
Lagos? I'm curious.
in Lagos, yeah.
Okay.
And they put us up in a hotel in Isolo,
Mm.
you know. So I spent the night in Isolo. And when I landed in Nigeria, you know, the wealth that I saw at the airport, you know what I mean? You talk about, I think that was the first time I was seeing like Rolls Royce.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you were seeing some
Ferraris,
heavy,
all that.
Yeah, you were seeing some heavy wealth. You know what I mean? I was like,
G-Wagons.
wow. Yeah. And first time I saw 3 people on a motorcycle, and you know,
Baby on the back.
Yeah, but it clicked immediately, because when I met Nigerians at Howard, you know, Nigerians, they come to America, I realized why they hit the ground running, because they're used to big city life. This is not, you know, they come to America, they fit in, they going, they hustling, you know what I mean? So I was like, okay, that makes sense when I saw, you know, so I just got a glimpse. But one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, and we talked about briefly, and we have so much more to talk about. This is part 1. I'm going to bring you forward so we can get more in depth, because I also wanted you to talk about your travel business. We didn't get to talk about Appeal, LC Pan. I mean, we got so much to talk about, but I want to be respectful of your time. But I have to talk to you about Dan Cote, the refinery that he built, investing, I think over $60 billion of his own capital. Someone was explaining to me that, you know, a lot of his wealth was gained through a cement monopoly.
Yes.
That he had. So, you know, his rise is a little bit shaky in terms of the ethical.
I'm glad you brought that up. A lot of people don't know where he made his money, but yes.
Yeah. So But I really hear him with a Pan-African rhetoric, and it seems almost like he is moving in that direction to fill some of the gaps. So, as a Nigerian, I wanted to just kind of get your sound on, and it might have been you that told me about the cement
Yeah,
monopoly.
I think it was me. I think it was me. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. You gave me the context. So talk about for those who don't know, one of Africa. Is he Africa's richest man?
No, he's the richest black man on the earth.
He's the richest
It's not.
black
It's
man
not
on
just
earth.
not just Africa on the
Not just
planet.
Africa. All
He's the
right.
richest black man on earth.
Explain to the people who is Dan, because a lot of people may be hearing this name for the first time.
Oh wow, yeah. You gotta.
Here, who's the richest black man on earth, and what are some of the moves that he's making right now that we should be watching?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Dangote. As you mentioned, he made his. Let me turn on this light real quick. You might have to turn on this light. Sorry about that. Let me do that real quick.
I thought you were getting some mood lighting. So you see, family, we bring serious people, you know what I mean, on the Lion Voice Network.
Sorry about that.
This is not your everyday.
Yes.
Okay. This is not your everyday broadcast. All right.
Yes.
Explain who is Dan Cote and why people should be aware of the moves that he's making.
Yes. As you mentioned, Dangote is the richest black person on the planet. And Nigerian. He's a Southwestern. And he made his initial money in cement. Dangote cement used to be the only cement that you could buy in Nigeria. It was the president at the time had created a licensing system, I'll put it that way, where you had to get a license, to manufacture cement, and there were many cement manufacturers, and Dangote was one of his associates, put it that way. So they basically made a deal, right, where he only gave a license to make cement to Dangote, and of course that the president at the time, got a cut of it. And so Dangote had a monopoly on cement for a very, very, very long time in Nigeria. Eventually, he was able to move into other industries because he has so much wealth. He is able to move into oil and various, agriculture, name it, he's in it. He has so many independent companies. One of the things he did very recently, and of course he could have made all that money, and I don't know, just put it in his pocket or whatever. He could, do whatever he wanted with it at that point. But I'll give him credit for using that money to try to make Africa and Nigeria in particular prosperous, independent of European powers, because we know that we have the resources. We know that they depend on our resources for their very survival. But because we have not exercised the power that we have to control our resources, we continue to be subject to their system. So one thing he did was he built the largest oil refinery in Africa. And I'm not sure what the largest oil refinery is in Europe, but I'm venturing this is either similar to that or this may be even bigger than that. I'm not sure about that one, but it's definitely the largest in Africa, and the capacity is enough to handle all the oil that's crude oil from Nigeria and all neighboring countries. So for a long time, it's been in the works for a long time. It was a talk for a long time, and then it happened. And unfortunately, Nigeria, as it is now, is still operating a very neo-colonial system, where, and also a legal crime system, I guess you call it, corruption system, where basically oil mines, oil oil mines or not wells and industries are privately owned by government officials. So government officials will give themselves personal control over oil fields and oil wells, as a result of them being in a particular position. So what happened is that a lot of them signed these contracts with these European uh, oil companies where they would send the crude oil. So even though Nigeria produces more crude oil than Dangote really needs for a basic function, prior to what's happening now in Iran, um, he could not get enough crude oil to even for a basic function of the refinery. It's massive and needs a certain amount of crude oil. So he was actually having to import crude oil from Europe that had previously had been sent to Europe from Nigeria. So imagine crude oil drilled in Nigeria, filling these barrels. If you drive along or sail along or go along the coast of Lagos, but that area, you see all these huge tankers constantly being filled up, and it will take this crude oil to Europe, and then the Europeans will refine it. So, but because they had these contracts, and it would not, even though there was a law that was passed that was supposed to guarantee him Dangote crude oil so that we would refine it locally in Nigeria, they weren't doing that. So he was literally buying oil from Europe that came from Nigeria. So instead of avoiding, the import tax, now you got to pay import and export tax to get it. As a matter of fact, I think Dangote is actually he's actually importing oil from the United States to refine in Nigeria, despite the fact that Nigeria produces. So there's a lot of institutional headwind, but I think over time, that begins to ease. And what has happened as a result of this war is that a lot of European countries that used to get their oil from the Persian Gulf area through the Straits of Hormuz, they can't get through there anymore.
Yes.
So because of that, they have found it easier to get oil from Nigeria. So now, Dangote is, he built the infrastructure, he built a refinery, he already built a network. So now because a lot of European countries wouldn't even buy, because he was trying to sell the refined oil, not just in Nigeria but in Europe. But they were telling him that his refined oil was not refined enough. The quality of sulfur content was too high, which is all BS. It turned out, because guess what happened? Once they couldn't get oil from the Middle East, now they're coming to him to give them the same oil as they thought, or they said wasn't good enough. So one of the biggest benefits of this war is actually Dangote, because he's been able to increase his customer base. And his ability to supply, not just to Nigeria, but all over the world. Unfortunately, Nigerians are not seeing the benefit of it because of the way that the way the oil. This is a crazy thing. The way the oil market works, it doesn't really matter how much oil you produce in your country, or how much is refined in your country. There's one set price for the whole world.
Yes.
So regardless of how sparse it is here, how populous it is here, which is what Americans don't understand. They think drill, baby, drill means anything. It doesn't mean anything, because what they pay at the pump isn't based on how much oil America produces or how much oil Nigeria produces. It's based on the global cost, which is affected by everything that happens on the market. But Dangote is definitely making some incredible moves, including Ethiopia. We talked about it a little earlier, where he built a $2.7 million fertilizer plant. A lot of people don't know that a lot of the fertilizers produced from petroleum products. A lot of that was coming from Saudi Arabia and Iran, those areas. So now he's going into that industry, so Africans can produce that fertilizer right in Africa. So these are a major. I mean, these are major global returns in the economy that are happening right underneath everybody's nose. Right underneath everybody's nose. So I mean, I really, credit him for using his wealth, not just having a wealth, because it's possible there are actually wealthier or richer Africans out there, but because they keep their money stored
In
in their
Europe.
house
Yes.
or in
Or
Europe
in
somewhere,
Europe.
no one
Yeah.
knows. He's using his money to actually build something for Africa.
And again, it just speaks to what the potential of Nigeria can be, because there's so much wealth there. If all of these wealthy Nigerians start investing in the infrastructure, and one of my hopes is what's happening in Ethiopia now, because if you know what's happening in Addis Ababa now, they're really investing in the infrastructure.
Yes.
And
Yes.
Addis Ababa looks like Dubai. If you see, just Google Addis Ababa right now. I mean, it's not, they're displacing people. They're not compensating a lot of people. They're destroying homes, even in Shashamani. But that being said, what my hope is that this is inspiring African leaders to take pride in their capitals, in their infrastructure, because I was just, I spend time on the internet sometime. I just look at some of the Chinese cities. And if you all haven't done that, China has all different type of cities. China's living in the future,
Right.
So I like to look at what's happening in China. Some of the greenest cities in the world are in China. China just builds all type of cities, you know what I mean? And these are cities over 1 million, 10 million people, some of them. These are not small cities.
Not anymore.
And I look on YouTube and, people walking through the city, there's no trash. Scooters and things just left out there. People just get up. There's, no crime. You know what I mean? This is just like tourists walking through some of these Chinese cities. But my hope is that what's happening in Ethiopia will inspire some of these African leaders to stop taking their money out the country and putting it into Switzerland and Monaco and Paris and all of these places, and start to take pride and invest in their cities and building the infrastructure to make Africa what we know Africa can be, which is the joy of the whole earth. Africa, we know how to do things the right way when we're motivated. The problem is that our leaders that we were given, and we're seeing that with what's happening in the Sahel region, it's not by mistake when you have people like Hastings Banda, you know what I mean, of Malawi. I just had an episode on Malawi, and we're talking about Hastings Banda, who was supporting the apartheid government in South Africa. These puppets are put in place to keep that extractive economy going, you know what I mean? And when we have leaders that rise, a lot of time they're coup d'etat, they're assassinated. And I think we can't underestimate or overestimate the impact of the suppression of Africa that it's had on Africa's development. A lot of time we blame ourselves, but we also have to realize that the war, the scramble has never stopped.
Exactly. There's been lots of attempts on Ibrahim Traore's life.
Over 20.
Right.
Over 20. I'm not going to keep you all night, although I could talk to you till the morning and we would still have a lot to talk about. But before we go, talk about some of the work that you're doing now.
Yes.
With Appeal, and then how people can support. And this is part one. I'm going to bring this brother back very soon because I didn't get, there's so much work that he's doing locally. This is not just a historian, but this brother is an action man like myself. So we didn't get to touch all of that. So I'm going to bring you forward just to talk about the community work, part of your work. But talk to us about some of the work that you're doing. Also, the travel business for people who want to tap into your travel business, who want to go to the continent with someone who's knowledgeable. He has a beautiful family, beautiful wife, beautiful children. He's a community man in all sense of the word. So tell us about some of that work and how people can tap in and how they can spend money with you.
interesting way to put it. Yeah, so just real quickly, we do have, as I mentioned, we have a travel business where we take people really all over the continent. I talked a lot about Nigeria. Today we have a a trip going to Nigeria, which is going to be on in February of next year.
Okay.
And people are signing up for the trip now. So if anybody's interested, you can put it in the chat. Mine, you can go to AfricanHeritageTravels.com, AfricanHeritageTravels.com.
And send me the link in WhatsApp so I can add it to the description of this video. So most people are gonna watch this on the replay.
Right.
There'll be a couple hundred at least that will watch this on the replay. So I'll make sure I put this in the description.
Right.
Okay.
And we in fact, I think we're doing a Wisdom Wednesday. People who are familiar with that, which is Tony Browder and IKG, about the trip in June, next month actually. So there's a lot going on with that. But I'm the executive director of Appeal Incorporated. That's probably the biggest hat that I wear, if you will. Appeal is a Black empowerment organization. Our mission is to organize and strategically utilize the vast resources of our people locally, nationally, and globally in order to build sustainable, prosperous communities. And we have a lot of platforms towards that. We have a think tank. We have educational programs like financial literacy programs, cultural, historical, political literacy programs. We have a Black-sided co-op where we promote Black manufacturers of everyday products. That and this is a place where you come and you buy the products, and you from all over the country, in some cases all over the world, everything the Black people make, from bathroom tissue to toothpaste to lotion, whatever you can imagine, your everyday products. And then we also are planning a conference, Black Empowerment Conference, at the end of September of this year.
Okay.
And you can go to appealinc.org and get all the information about appealinc.org. And I'll also I'm gonna put this in the private chat for you, Bob. A link if people want to donate to Appeal. And I would definitely appreciate it. Just go to appealinc.org/donate. That'll take you there. And we're about building for the community, building for our people. And we're a membership organization. We have members all over the world, all over the United States. Board members in California, to New York, and everywhere in between. And we're always looking for more people who are interested in actually building something substantial to change the conversation, to change our relationship with the system, and to bring real prosperity for our people. We have online. Most of our workshops are online. On Saturday mornings we have workshops. You can go to our website and sign up, appealinc.org. Sign up for any of the workshops dealing with a variety of topics. But the conference is going to be in person, even though we do have an online component. It's going to be in person in DC on the last weekend of September. You can also sign up for that on our website. So appealinc.org is sort of a one-stop shop in terms of everything Appeal.
Beautiful, beautiful. Again, I just want to thank you, Baba, for coming forward as a part one. This is a part one of many future. I'm going to have a lot more of my Pan-African community. We always say the DMV Pan-African community is a special one because the people here don't just talk the talk, they walk the walk. You're hard pressed to find anyone in the Pan-African community in the DMV who hasn't been to Africa, several times. It's going to be tough. You know what I mean? Most of the people are people who travel, who have long history. Our elders here are legendary elders. So I really, we have a wealth of knowledge here in the Washington, D.C. And people who are not here don't know how black this area is. You know what I
Right.
mean? That's the thing. You see Donald Trump, you see all of this thing, and you feel like Washington D.C. is a Eurocentric place. I mean, it's changing. Gentrification is real, but when you talk about Washington D.C., PG County, you talk about Montgomery County. I mean, some of the most affluent black people on the planet are
Absolutely.
right
That's true.
here in this region, and
And some of the most progressive,
some of the most progressive. Yes,
and Pan African and African centered,
yes,
organized people, probably anywhere in the world is
in
right
the
here in the
world.
DC area,
Exactly,
because you have
exactly.
so many really serious people, serious organizations represented. You mentioned LC Pan earlier. LC Pan is the leadership council for Pan African nationalism, and it
Yes,
consists of 21 individual organizations,
yes.
in the DMV area. They're dealing with various aspects of Black life, African life, Pan African life, spiritual, political, economic, what have you, is well
Uh,
represented.
and I'm proud to say I was there at the founding. IDOR is
Yes,
a part of that council.
yes.
So it's active.
And we have a
When you
festival coming up too. We have a festival
Yes,
coming up.
yes, yes.
Yes,
Actually,
yes.
send me the flyer. We'll
Okay.
start promoting it here on the platform. If we have a commercial, I would love to run the commercial as well. We'll do that as well. But you see, family, we don't just talk the talk, we walk the walk. Um, my brother here, you really, as I said, this is a classic episode. Big up everyone who watched it live. To all of my African audience, I know most of you all watch these in the morning when you wake up. This is way in the hours in Africa. I
Yes.
saw Ras Kadamawe from Zambia. I saw him in the comments. Some of my African audience is hardcore, you know what I mean? So I saw Zambia tapping in, but I know most people are gonna watch this on the replay. So tap in. I already put the links in the description for Appeal and for the travel. Please remember my vision. My vision: 50,000 people spending $10. We can change the world, one episode at a time. Even
Absolutely.
if we don't get 50,000, if we get 1,000 people spending $10, we still are gonna shake the earth. So I want my lion pride, even if it's 100 people, whatever it can be. Let's start by taking action and spending those dollars. I would love Appeal to call me in the morning and say, Baba, we got $500,000 in the account because of your program. That's my dream. You know what I mean?
Bro.
Make my dream come to life. One of these days, I know I may have to get to 1 million subscribers before I get 500,000 people to do that. But I'm gonna keep on saying it until it happens. Word sound is power. So I'm going to continue. Just give us a final word to the global Pan-African family. Baba Kelechi, anything you want to just leave everybody with?
Yeah, well, I want to first of all thank Baba Kwesi for, Bansu for, welcoming us here. Very happy to be among, African people, Pan-African people, African-centered people, forward-thinking people, and we are the mothers and fathers of civilization. We have to remind ourselves that we have to teach our children that. When I say our children, I mean those that are the product of our genes. We are the fathers and mothers of all people on the planet, and they need to learn that as well as we do. Because when you recognize you're the father of the household, then it's your responsibility to take charge.
Yes.
And we oftentimes don't recognize that it's our responsibility to take charge. The world began to fall apart when we left the throne, when we left our position, when we left our rightful place as the kings and queens of the planet. So for the planet to be saved, it's not for our vanity. It's literally for the salvation of the planet. We have to step up. Only the father and the mother can straighten up the household. Children can never do that.
Straight.
So that's the truth. That what we're doing is standing up the black man and the black woman so that the world can survive. It's critical work, people. And thank you
Yes.
for having me, Baba. And thank you for all the support that you give in the past and all the support that your audience gives you. And thank you for having this station, this avenue to share, whatever little, we have to share. Hopefully, it affects people in a positive way and helps them grow and reconnect with their true African selves.
Give thanks. And there you have it, another classic episode deep into the history of Nigeria. We will return tomorrow. Make sure you tune in at 8 p.m. sharp as we welcome the UNIA to the platform. Baba Singor, Baba Mosey, Rassam. I don't know if Rassam's going to make it. He had a conflict. I think we're going to have Chief Fode calling in from Senegal. So we may have a replacement. I'll let you know tomorrow. But make sure you tune in. UNIA, we're going to talk about the works, UNIA LCL. Again, I will be performing and speaking at their African Liberation Day event on May 30th. So we're going to talk about that, but we're also going to talk about some of the mobilization work that they got going on here in the Washington, D.C. area. So make sure you tune in tomorrow. Also, Sunday, we welcome Empress Danielle for our monthly town hall meeting, May 31st, the same day. We will be, actually, no, the day after Sunday, we will be hearing from her about preparing for things to come. They are saying that what is coming down the line is going to be worse than the Great Depression. We want to make sure that we get our families together. I've already started purchasing dry goods, different things, and stockpiling. But there's other things that we need to be aware of that are coming down the pipeline. They're not speaking about it, but when you take 20% of the world's oil off the market, that's not something that you can easily just cover up with rhetoric. You know what I mean? It's either you got the oil or you don't got the oil. Right. So we as Black people, all people of the world, not just Black people, but all people need to be preparing our families for what is to come. The best case scenario, we're going to have huge price spikes of goods and services, just because of the cost of diesel and fuel. So that's the best case scenario.
We're already seeing that now.
And we're already seeing that now. And the prices are being suppressed. The market is being manipulated right now. I was watching an analyst. He said that America has been selling their strategic reserves under market value.
Yep.
And they're saying if they continue by August, the strategic reserves of America will be done. But they're doing that to try to keep the market low so that, for the midterms elections.
Right. That's literally, they could care less what happens after November 5th.
Exactly.
Even if they care less what happens to the world after that. Everything has literally been manipulated to keep, Americans, seeing us whatever they want to see, I guess. It's
exactly
insane.
So we're going to be talking about that. So if you want to be a part of that, join our Patreon. It's $10 a month. That's how we pay the bills here on the channel and keep, the goal is to really create a first-class audience-funded media platform. That is the vision that we have. As we return to the continent, we need to control our narrative. So if you are one of those people who see the vision, who love the work, get off the fence and support. We are building a powerful community, and we would love to have you join us. Big up all of the Lion Pride on Patreon in the comments. Man like Tommy Dread, man like, who else did I see here? Grassroots. Who else did I see here? Big up Devani Green, I know. And one of my favorite new Lion Pride members who changes his screen name every episode. What is this today? Renarian 6. Big up for the informative comments every episode on all of our Lion Pride family. And we're going to continue to bring you this type of content, unfiltered, unmitigated, and we're going to do it with joyfulness as long as you all love it and as long as you support it. Why? Because the time has come for the Lions to tell our own story. Yep. And this is the Lion Voice. Blessings, blessings, blessings.
Yo, blessed love. This is Max Breeze. It's time for the Lions to tell their own story. See? God bless.
Blessed love. Yes, I. Lion Voice Network.
What are you waiting for? Come together, calling from near and far. Know who you are. What are you waiting for? Rally up, it takes the dust. What are you waiting for? Ancestors paved the way for us. Yes, I am Ketis Oyonde, asking, what are you waiting for to come together? The time has come for the Lions to tell our own story. This is the Lion's Voice.
African pride, root of all nations, boy. I tried with the lion, the Rastafari. Lion of it tried with lioness like I too. Empress on the front line, we need you. Well, this is Medicine, the steady one, and you are now tuned in to the Lion's Voice Network. What the lion fought for do? Scorch them. Roast and parch them.
I will never stop, hail the Most High, and I will never stop, call Rastafari. Blessed love, this is Kushite representing for the Lion's Voice. We are here to tell our own story, Rastafari.
The time has come for Lions to tell our own story. Yes, you're listening to Lion's Voice. I is Rasabat chilling from the island of St. Croix. Yeah, I'm bringing to your Rastafari vibes. Can you feel it? Rastafari. Babylon born when Rasta come together. Can you feel it? Rastafari. Because Babylon done when I and I come together. Look how we live together, look how we work together, oh, Babylon done when Rasta come together. Yeah, Rastafari, His Majesty and Empress men in bless. Yeah man, hailing from St. Croix, Rastafari, I hear you. Aye.
Empress Manel, Alliance Science. Oh, you're wrong. Universally unfold, be told. Oh. Blessed love, this is Itege Idama, and it's time for the lioness and the lion's voices to be heard. This is the Lion's Voice, Rastafari.
Greetings, this is Warrior King, and the time has come for the lions and the lioness to tell their own story. This is the Lion's Voice. Give thanks and praise for the wonderful blessing that's been poured on me. Give thanks and praise. Jah use I as an instrument to set the people free. Jah give her the power to chant. Jah give her the power to chant. Rastafari, the Lion's Voice.
The fittest of the fittest shall survive. My people, open your eyes. Wake up, Blessed love, this is Queen Omega representing for all lions and lionesses. With the lion's voice, we come to tell our story. Rastafari live it. Hey, the lion's voice, Rastafari.
Yeah, David Dread of Steel Pulse, and I'm saying hail to Lion Voice because it's time that the lion have its voice, have its own story. Says I'm stepping out here. Hear me now. Yeah, the lion's voice. Raw.
I'm Nana Farika. The time has come for the lioness to tell her story from her viewpoint and tell the world who Queen Omega is. This is the lion's voice.
Well, Lion Voice, tell them that's the people first choice. Lion Voice, make the lioness them feel nice. Lion Voice, with the lion cubs we sacrifice. Lion Voice, got to show the people them the life. Lion Voice.